So you like sports?
I'm a sports guy. Yeah.
Great. All right. Let's do it. Welcome to the 17:6 podcast, where we help you turn the world upside down by the Lordship of Christ. I am Trevor.
I'm Caleb.
And I'm Zach.
Right. Welcome back, Caleb.
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Don't feel like I was ever gone.
Maybe you weren't. Well, you were.
I was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not only are you back.
Video proof.
Yeah, exactly. Not only are you back, but you're back on a Saturday morning.
I am.
It's fantastic.
Was I gone for one episode?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's been a while.
It has been so long that last time we recorded on a Saturday morning, it was bright outside at this time, and now it's dark outside.
That's true.
Maybe we just got started earlier today.
Nope.
That could be true too.
Nope, we have not.
Nope.
It's 7-Eleven.
Yep.
Rest in peace, 7-Eleven. I heard they're closing down.
Are they really?
Yeah.
That's sad.
That might be fake news, but I did hear.
Capitalism is brutal.
Hey, did you guys see that Trump went and worked at McDonald's this last week? Was
Yeah.
it this last week or was it week
I know.
before?
I think you're right.
Oh, it's hard to keep up. So he went and worked at McDonald's, but I heard that he fixed the ice cream machine.
If he did that, he would 100% be elected.
Yeah.
There would be no other option.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that wouldn't. You're right.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Okay.
that wasn't my joke. But
I know. I hope it wasn't your joke. I mean,
No, it wasn't
It's a
my
really
joke.
good talking point.
Oh,
Me
no.
too.
No. You really fixed the ice cream? No, I don't know.
No.
I'm just kidding about that.
That's all he needs to do. Like, that's the last leg. If he could fix the ice cream machine at McDonald's, election won.
Yep.
And
For sure.
then by the time you see this, I guess maybe the election is already over. I don't know when we're releasing this episode.
Do we have any in the log?
We have like
We have one.
Okay.
So this would be, this is Monday of the election.
Yeah.
So-
So perfect timing.
Yeah, it is. It is
Okay.
really good timing. So if he's down in the polls when we release this, all he needs to do, walk into walk into McDonald's,
Fix the ice cream machine.
fix the ice cream machine.
Just go around
Yeah.
from McDonald's to McDonald's. Is your ice cream machine broken?
We better get a move on,
how long
guys.
did you
Yeah.
work on
Oh,
that?
you have a dad joke for us still.
Yeah. So Zach, I used to play the piano by ear, but now I use my hands.
That was good. It was good.
I don't even look at Trevor anymore.
I could see that one coming from a mile.
Yeah, it's okay. It wasn't my best one.
Well, you've been off for a few weeks.
I have been off.
Okay.
So-
So what are we doing?
This morning we're talking Acts 6. Continuing on in our Acts study.
Yeah. Acts 6. So how's this broken down? What are you thinking?
So we got two sections. This is a shorter chapter for sure, I think.
Yeah. Way shorter.
The first section, it's talking about the 7 who are chosen to serve. And then the second section specifically is talking about Stephen being seized for the works that he's doing. Right?
Yeah.
The 7 chosen to serve in the first section would be kind of possibly like early church deacons, maybe.
Yeah. I think
We'll
that's
get
good.
into it a little bit
Yeah,
more.
no, that's a good point. So why were, I guess, these deacons, or these people, these 7 chosen to serve? And it looks like if you just started verse 1, we have some widows that are being ignored, neglected, they said. Specifically Hellenists, and I want to just define who the Hellenists are. They're just Greek-speaking Jews. There's nothing crazy about it. It's not some underground cult. It's just, Greek-speaking Jews. So outside of that, Zach, do you have anything over verse 1?
On verse 1, so just kind of piggybacking off of what you were talking about. So the Hellenists are there because, just for historical background purposes, it has to do with the fact that the Jews were exiled and they started adopting other cultures. So now that you have the Hebrews with the Hellenists, you have a multicultural church. I think that is significant, especially post Acts chapter 2. Like we're still multicultural, and we can't nail down for sure what caused the problems. Like, Was it like some intentional, oh, they're Hellenists, I'm not going to give them, their fair share or whatever? Probably not. That doesn't seem to fit the narrative that we've received from the earlier chapters of Acts, where everyone's needs are met. Probably more than likely is that there's a language barrier.
Or maybe the Hellenists were just the Karens. Maybe they were the squeaky wheel. They're like, we're all getting left out over here.
They were complaining.
They were complaining.
Maybe we just solved the mystery.
That could be.
You're welcome.
But yeah, so somehow there's still multicultural stuff going on in the church, and that also leads to just making the point that there's problems in the early church. So a lot of people, they will go to a church for a year and they'll be in the honeymoon stage. It's a wonderful church. And then after a year or two, they start to realize, oh no, there are problems at this church.
This is nothing like the early church. I'm out.
Yeah. And it could be things that this is not sinful. I don't think this is sinful here in Acts 6. This is just a matter of administrative, logistical problems right here.
The church is growing.
Yeah.
And when you grow, you're going to meet problems, and that's okay. Now, where it would have been sinful if they would have been continued to be neglected.
Right.
If the apostles wouldn't have stepped up and said, hey, let's delegate this.
Right. Social justice is important, but it has to be competent social justice. And that is what we see here. They're wanting to take after or take care of the poor, the needy, but it has to be done well.
Yeah. Careful with that word social justice, though.
Oh, yeah.
May misunderstand that.
Yeah, I am unwilling to relinquish the term.
Okay.
That was a term that the church has been using for a long time, and if they want to misuse it, I'm just going to grab it back and use it. But that's what you see going on here is they're doing it at a competent level.
Right. So let's see. Yeah. Also with that, the poor is being taken care of by the church, not the government. I mean, maybe we should take some cues from that. These are something also to note. These were believers in the church. So we're looking at, again, a reference to chapter 4, where there was no needs within the church.
Right.
That doesn't mean we can't take care of the poor outside the church, but there should be, for the church today, some emphasis on taking care of the needs in the church and the poor in the church, and not having the government's social programs take care of that.
Right.
So would you say the church has failed in that, or in that manner, and it's let the government
Yeah. So I
fill
don't
that void?
I don't want to paint with that broad of a brush by any means, because I don't know every church.
Right.
But I think there's a tendency to relax that area of maybe church giving. Like, okay, there's a government program for that. Let's go let's go that way. I don't want to, and maybe they just don't realize it, because the social economic programs of today's time is just part of society. And it stinks.
And I shouldn't pay.
No.
I'm just meant the church as a whole.
Yeah. I didn't think you were. I didn't think you were.
But yeah, I think you're like, we had to recognize that we are in a different situation than they were, because we can not like it all we want, but the fact of the matter is there are social programs for this kind of thing now.
Right.
And the amount of money that we are taxed to take care of that would be different than what they were going through.
Exactly.
So we are in a different context, and it's worth just drawing that out.
Right. All right. Let's go down. One thing, they did have a daily distribution. I just find that fascinating. I think Paul talks about something similar, like a role for the widows in 2 Timothy, or maybe it's Titus. Like there is some type of distribution or role for the widows to be on, so the church can take care of them. And I find that fascinating.
So there's an organized effort.
Right.
Yeah. And in that pastoral epistle, I also can't remember if it's first, second, or Timothy or Titus, but he makes the point that like not every widow is going to be on this role.
Right.
Like she has to be over a certain age and that kind of thing. And he makes the point like, hey, if she's a younger widow, it's better for her just to remarry.
Exactly. And is her family taking care of her? If she has family, then the family needs to step in. And if they're not stepping in, they're not even a Christian. I mean,
yeah, they're worse than a pagan.
You're right. Right.
I go up on that for a while, but I won't. I'll resist.
We should talk about that sometime. I mean, even if it's off camera, I like that subject. That's something that we've kind of missed.
Yeah, you're right.
Culturally. But anyway, okay. Going down to verse 2. Sorry. Okay, going down to verse 2. What do you have on verse 2?
I just had the fact that in verse 2, where it says they're saying that we should not give up the preaching of the word of God
Yep.
to serve tables. That word serve is the Greek word there is where we get the word deacon. So if you have deacons in your church, this is related to that subject
Yeah.
right there. So kind of what Caleb was saying earlier, the actual word like office deacon is not used in this passage, but it seems to be kind of foreshadowing that office right here.
Right. We also see that the apostles knew what their primary calling was. They were called to preach Christ. And waiting tables is not demeaning. That's still a very important thing, but that's not what they were called to do. So they delegated the task rather than being distracted. I know a lot of times we may be doing something that the Lord's put in front of us, and then something important comes up and it distracts us. So I think we can kind of take lessons here from the apostles of like, just don't get distracted from what you're called to do as you're turning the world upside down by the Lordship of Christ. Keep doing that. Don't get distracted by something else important. Delegate it if you can.
Yeah. And just on that, to make the same point you're saying, we know it's important because in time management circles, we talk about if your schedule's getting too packed, you ask, can I eliminate this? And if you can't eliminate it, can you automate it? And if you can't automate it, then you get to, can you delegate it? And we see that this is so important, they can't eliminate it. And there's no way to automate this kind of thing.
Right.
So the fact that they're delegating it shows that this is really important. This is not, there's not extra credit given for this. This is like the main grade. You know what I'm saying? Like taking care of widows is critical. So it can't be done away with. But they understand that they only have 24 hours in a day and they only have so much time to do the things. And it's exactly what you're saying. A lot of times we get distracted by other good things that other people should be doing.
Right. Then we also see, was there anything else over that section? I was going to drop down to verse 3.
Yeah, I just have something
Okay.
in verse 3.
Okay. So when they're picking out these 7 men, apostles are like, we're not going to wait tables, that we're not going to do that. That's not what we're called to do. Pick out 7 from among you. There are some qualifications that are being established here, more qualifications, maybe same qualifications, just articulated and drawn out more in 1 Timothy given to the deacon. But we see the 3 qualifications for these 7 men are good repute, men of good repute, full of the Spirit and of wisdom. I just find that good. They need to be well known in the community in the community amongst other Christians, and wise, and then full of the Spirit.
So if they're of good repute, that means that they've already been doing some kind of service work,
They're known.
which means that they weren't waiting for the official stamp of deacon to get to serving.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're already doing the stuff,
Self-starters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
taking initiative, that kind of thing.
So I wonder why the apostles gathered everybody together and told them to pick out from among themselves 7 and I mean, eventually they were all brought to the apostles and they, they were like, yeah, we approve. But I wonder why they had them pick among themselves 7 out.
Because the early church was congregational.
Okay.
Mic drop. Boy, that's going to stir some feathers.
That is,
So what is congregational really quick? Just
yeah, there are different forms of church government. And I know everyone probably listening to this has been on the edge of their seat waiting to discuss church government.
Yeah.
And I am going to just give you a taste of it. But there's like I don't even know all the different terms, but there's like elder led versus elder ruled. That would be one is where the elders are not necessarily making the final decisions, but they're like exercising a lot of influence over the congregation. I think elder ruled is the one where like the elders just make the decisions.
yeah, that's the best one.
That's the best one.
I want to be ruled or rule with an iron fist.
That's it. You have like Presbyterian, which would be that there are those outside of the congregation who are making decisions that influence the congregation as well.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of making a joke about the early church being congregationalist, but that's the idea that the congregation itself votes on everything.
Yeah.
So, we're wanting to install a new pastor. Well, let's get everyone together and
vote.
and vote for it. A lot of Baptist churches are congregational, but even though I don't think that congregationalism is the how we do all of church government, this seems to be what's going on here for the selection of deacons.
Yeah. Well, yes, because the apostles said to do it. So they made the choice to have the congregation, to have the people.
So even in this passage, you see kind of but they're not, that's another thing that when you go to Acts, you have to realize that our situation is a little bit different,
Right.
because these apostles, like these are the 12 who are the foundation for the church.
Right.
And most of the time when we are trying to apply this passage, we substitute pastor for apostle here, but those are two different things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess all I was trying to say is that there seems to be multiple forms of government going on even right here, not contradictory, but
Right.
it's not such a easy just slap on congregationalism and bada bing, bada boom.
I mean,
Well,
we'll go
go
for
ahead.
it. No,
Okay.
no, go for it.
So, I mean, the apostles did give them the guidelines, like Trevor mentioned earlier, but in the verse 3, at the end, it still says, whom we will appoint to this duty. So even
you're
though the seven are being picked out by the disciples, not the apostles, they are still being appointed by the apostles, right?
Yeah.
You're right.
In the end,
Yeah. That's very true. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it does kind of make sense to have, so if the church was growing, I mean, we're talking thousands of people at this point, the apostles would be like, you have a better sense, a better finger on who you all respect and who are these things. Because there's thousands of people. We don't know everyone. So pick out the ones that you know are good of repute, of wisdom, and full of the Spirit, ones that you would follow if they're going to be serving you.
Man, I wish I could be a fly on a wall for the specifics of all this. Like Luke's putting it in a few verses, but can you imagine how much of an ordeal it was to pick 7 men from the thousands of people that are involved?
I mean, it was kind of awkward when it happened at our church.
Yeah, you're right.
Were you there for that, Caleb?
no, but I heard stories.
Yeah. So this
would like to have
precise
been there.
thing happened at our church, but without thousands of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our pastor said, "Hey, we've looked at Acts chapter 6. You guys figure out who the deacons are going to be." And so we just joined in a big circle and we picked out 4 deacons. We were
Not
there
7.
we were there for a little bit.
It took a little while.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys notice? I'm sure you did. I'm saying this rhetorically. Do you guys notice that all the deacons that are picked out are men?
No way. You're saying Stephen is not a girl's name?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Timon?
All of these deacons are men.
Huh. Interesting.
So the early church seems to be picking primarily men as I say primarily, but so far all we're seeing is men as the leaders.
That's a great point.
What are you trying to say, Zach?
Oh,
Yeah.
you want me just to come out? Okay, so the leadership is or not. I keep saying primarily. I'm trying to be more nuanced than I should be. The leadership is men.
Okay.
The men are leading the church. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So
I think that's good to point out. I didn't catch that before. Good job.
there you go. Well, it's just a narrative portion that we see happens in this case scenario. But
Yeah.
we're going to see that continued throughout. So the 12 disciples, which become apostles, are men, then the deacons are men.
Wait, you're saying Mary Magdalene was not part of the... Have you read the Da Vinci Code? Have you read that?
I have not read that
I
one.
watched the movie. It wasn't very good. Tom Hanks didn't.
Oh,
Whatever.
man.
Okay. Going down to verse 4, unless there's anything else, I have... Okay, so we see 2 important ministries of the church shine here. The first one is preaching the gospel, preaching Christ. And the second one is taking care of the needs of believers. So going back to this whole waiting of tables, it's not like demeaning by any means. These are 2 important ministries of the church. So throwing that out there.
Yeah, on verse 4, and I know this is, for most of our listeners, this is so elementary and so basic, so duh, but I just want to keep pointing it out that in verse 4, the fact that they delegate the serving of tables so they can pray and have time for the ministry of the word. The church that turned the world upside down was very, very scripture centric. Like this is a major concern for them. And I just want to keep making that point over and over and over again, because there's so many movements that are trying to get the church away from being scripture centric. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that has to be one of those pillars that we're just not willing to relinquish.
That's really good to point out. Devoting themselves to that. It's fantastic. All right. Anything else on that? We'll jump down a little bit more to this idea called a proselyte.
Oh yeah, go for that.
Okay. So there's a word here that talks about Nicholas. He's a proselyte of Antioch. All that means is that he was born a Gentile and he converted to Judaism, who's now a Christian. Yeah, that's all it means. Again, not an underground cult. All right. Anything else?
Not until verse 6.
Okay. Go for it. Go for verse 6.
All right. So the only comment, and this has been really implied throughout the whole thing, but I'm just going to go ahead and make it explicit here in verse 6. But you see that the early church has hierarchy. They have order and structure and leaders and that kind of thing. So they're not afraid to have positional leadership. Where I think because our society is so emphatically like democratic, we tend to want to diminish the need for hierarchy.
Right.
But clearly it's very prevalent in the early church.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Right. So you got apostles. Now you have deacons.
Yeah.
Then, so after the deacons are selected, they are prayed over by the apostles, and the apostles lay their hands on them. Trevor, what do you think is going on here?
Well, there's a few things going on here. I honestly have no idea. We can infer a few things, but it's not really explained. Here's my thought, a possibility. I'm not saying this is where I'm planting my flag, but here's a possibility. They prayed for them, they laid their hands on them and gave them a blessing like we see in the Old Testament when a father gives a blessing to their sons. Yep. So that's one possibility. What do you have anything else?
Another possibility would be that just like Joshua had his hands laid on Moses laid his hands on Joshua, and the Spirit is transferred from Moses to Joshua. That's at the end of Deuteronomy, where that happens. Now, we know that these deacons are full of the Spirit, but that doesn't mean that the Spirit can't, we've already seen that the Spirit comes on people multiple times. Right. So that doesn't mean that there couldn't have been from the apostles some other, transfer of Spirit for the purpose of serving tables.
All right. So that makes a lot of sense now, thinking about verse 8. This just occurred to me. Right after you read that, prayed and laid hands on them. In verse 8, you see Stephen, who is doing great wonders and signs. Directly following that. Man, maybe you are on something.
Yeah. And this is much more prevalent in Catholic circles and Eastern Orthodox circles. And I'll just put it on the table there that I'm not super knowledgeable on this subject, but they would look at Acts 6, verse 6, and see some ground for apostolic succession here. So because of the fact that they lean into the hierarchy of the early church, there really is something that the apostles are laying their hands on the deacons to give the deacons something that they couldn't have received otherwise. So the deacons couldn't have, God is never limited, and they would say that God's not limited by this, but the way that he does this is by their higher leaders laying hands on them and actually that spiritual transfer happening.
Right. Yeah. That's hard to get behind for me as well.
Yeah. I just don't know it well enough to, I see what's going on here, but I don't know if I would say that necessarily demands that interpretation.
Yes. Right. Verse 7, we got some people coming to be Christians again. Look at that.
Yeah. So the early church is growing and someone's counting. I'm going to keep pointing this out. Somebody is counting butts in the seat.
So the two people, at our church that count, we appreciate you.
Yes, you are being biblical.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. So disciples are multiplying. Oh, and I'll let you hit on who exactly is multiplying here.
So something just to point out is that it says a great many of priests became obedient to the faith. So this I find really important, or something to point out, is because those are the people who are against the Christians, against the followers of Jesus at this point. Their hearts are being converted by the Spirit, and they're coming to the faith. And I think that has to point to us, point to the readers, as the world is being turned upside down. The enemies of Christ are being turned upside down. Their hearts are being transformed only by the Spirit. So, so yeah. All right. Next section. What do we got here, Caleb? Do you want to give us a brief overview of what's going on in this?
Yeah. So in verse 8 through 15, it's covering Stephen being seized, and it starts out. I think it's important to point out that Stephen, full of grace and power, like you mentioned, he was doing great wonders and signs, and then so they seized Stephen. They I don't want to get too far ahead here, but they falsely, or they accused him. They slandered against him. Is that what we talked about?
Sounds good to me.
Before, said he was doing all these things, that blasphemous words against Moses and God. And then they got everybody stirred up.
Yeah. So we got one of the 7 being seized here. It's specifically, there's this synagogue here. This is where they would meet, of the freedmen. That just means Jews freed from slavery. Nothing too crazy. Not the Illuminati again. I'm just trying to dispel all cultic thoughts, all Illuminati thoughts in this passage, defining words. So yeah, I think this passage is a little bit more straightforward. There might not be as much to bring out, but
yeah, there really isn't as much. I'm going to back up to verse 8 just real quick.
Go for it.
So let's talk about Stephen being full of grace and power. He was doing great wonders and signs among the people. So a lot of times you'll hear that it was just the apostles doing signs and wonders in the early church. And we see here that Stephen he's a deacon. He's not an apostle. Yeah. He's not a writer of scripture. He is merely a servant in the early church, and he is also doing signs and wonders. And that's likely what draws so much attention to him. Not just that,
right?
Because we're going to see something else in verse 10 where he draws attention to himself, but he's definitely drawing attention. So it's not just the apostles doing the signs and wonders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good to point out. We know that it's not just educated men who can argue with the lawyers back in a few chapters ago in Acts, because we saw that the apostles were speaking boldly and they were uneducated. They had no idea. But now we're seeing it's not just the apostles that's able to do the signs and wonders. Like, I think this is saying that the Spirit is for everyone.
Yeah. The thing is not to idolize the apostles as special members, because that was exactly what you're saying. The whole point of the outpouring of the Spirit was that they're all receiving the Spirit. And it's not just the signs and wonders, it's also the wise debating, even though they're uneducated men, right? So you're seeing all aspects of the Spirit. The point is that the ascended Christ is advancing his kingdom through his church. That's the point.
Exactly.
And the idea of, we have 12 in particular, or we have the scriptures being written, that's not what all this is centering around. It's centering around the ascended Christ. Mm-hmm. So the question then for modern day application is, is Christ still ascended? Then if he is, then we should still be seeing these things happening.
Right. His kingdom is still advancing.
Right. Verse 10.
Yeah.
You want to jump down there?
Yeah, go for it. You go for it.
They could not withstand the wisdom and the spirit with which he was speaking. So Stephen is wisely putting together arguments against the opposition at this point in time.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that wisdom, spirit, and does it use the word debate? I thought it did somewhere, but I'm not seeing it now. But definitely if the word is not used, the concept is being there, where he's presenting arguments against what they are saying. And a lot of times you'll hear all these words kind of fighting against each other, but for Stephen, they all come together. So he's a wise spirit-filled debater. Yeah. And it's all together in one person. So I think there are some misunderstandings of 1 Corinthians where it talks about how we don't want to be wise like the world. We want to just depend on the Spirit's power. But I think that's a lot of times how that can be applied is misunderstood or misinterpreted, I should say. And what you see here in Stephen is it all coming together.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point.
So in verse 9 is where it talks about these different groups of people rose up and disputed with Stephen.
Yep, thank you.
Good catch. Good catch. The next thing that I have is that Stephen was being convicted or persecuted in the same way that Christ was. They were lying about him, changing his words and twisting his words and setting up false witnesses against him. I think there's a pattern here that when you come in conflict with the enemies of Jesus, they will twist your words and they're not scared to lie about you to see your downfall.
Man, there's a lot of, we talk about there being types of Christ. So like David is a type of Christ, right?
Yeah.
It seems like Stephen's almost like I don't know how to word this, like a post type, like after he's following the pattern.
Yeah.
Not only is he falsely accused here, I mean, even the signs and wonders, the wise words,
Right.
the false accusations, and even his final words, like,
Yes.
forgive them for they don't know what to do.
Yes.
He's just following that pattern really, really well.
Exactly. I mean, it's still even about, they're talking about destroying the temple or destroying the customs. Like that's the same thing that was brought against.
Right.
It's just, it's strange.
Yep.
Caleb, was there anything else on that one? Caleb, I want you to at least have the last word on this on verse 15.
Yeah. So, verse 15, and gazing at him, all who sat in the council, so not the disciples, this would be the Jewish council, right? Saw that his face was like the face of an angel. And my question is how did they know what the face of an angel looked like?
I think we know.
Have they
think
seen
we
an
know.
angel? We do know.
Yeah, I'm looking at him right now.
Are you looking behind me?
Yeah, there's a guy behind you.
Yeah. Zach?
Yeah.
Did he start growing eyes or
Yeah, he must have just been covered in six wings.
covered in eyes and
eyes, and maybe they turned into a wheel. I don't know.
He grew 4 eyes.
but his face wasn't what did you say about Moses?
So it's not said that his face is not glowing because Moses' face was so bright that he had to wear a veil over his face. It's
But-
not saying that.
Did they say, I mean, back when Moses came down from the mountain, that's right. Right? And
Yeah, they didn't.
he was speaking with God, right?
Right.
So to me the difference there is they just said that his face looked like the
bright.
face of an angel, not
Yeah.
that he had, I mean, I guess the
Yeah.
difference there would be
Yeah, I was reading in some footnotes that people infer that it was just a bright face, like
okay.
Moses's.
Okay.
But Moses didn't say he had a face like an angel when he
Yeah.
came down. It was like his face was just bright.
Yeah. Just glowing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, your skin looks
Yeah.
great, Moses.
We got something else going on here.
What kind of regimen have you been doing up there? No, I mean, the only thing that I could think of is maybe through the generations that,
Yeah.
I mean, because angels had been seen
Right.
before. And then you get into a whole other thing about when Jesus was born and the shepherds and the angels came down and,
Yeah.
I
mean, at least-
they were afraid.
You know what? Maybe one of those shepherds climbed the rank to the in the Sadducees. It's like,
Maybe.
I've seen this before,
I've
and this
seen it,
looks
yeah.
eerily familiar.
That could be because it wouldn't have been that long ago. Word would have got around
Yeah.
what angels looked like.
Yeah. I mean, maybe angels visited him a lot more.
Do angels have a face?
Good question. I mean, well, yeah, they have to have a face. It's just terrifying.
Yeah.
Every time an angel, or more than likely, every time you see an angel like come down I'm thinking Judges, they worshipped the angel, or like they fell down and worshipped, right? And with, oh man, who's the strong guy in the book of Judges? I can't remember. his name. Samson. Didn't his father's like, oh my gosh, it's an angel.
Yeah.
And like terrified. See the same thing like
So-
in Revelation, John worships an angel by accident. He's like, stop worshiping me.
Do you think the council saw Stephen's face and they were like terrified?
I mean, that does come to mind.
That would fit.
Yeah.
That would fit. Okay.
Well, good times. Is there anything else? All right. Well, let's leave our audience and let them speculate what a face of an angel looks like.
Yep.
Actually, comment below, do some chat GPT. Let us see the best angel face. let's see if AI can help us out on this. All right. Well, if nothing else, we'll stop here. Make sure you like and subscribe to Facebook, YouTube specifically, and we've got some TikTok stuff. But yeah, I don't know, Spotify. That's the other one. That's the other one I couldn't think of. Spotify. All right. Anything else, Caleb?
Nope.
Okay.
You did great, Trevor.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to the 17:6 podcast, where we help you turn the world upside down by the lordship of Christ. Oh man. Cut it. That's in. That's in. That made it.
I know it. I'm gonna keep that in there.
Best one yet.
Gold. That's why you got it. Then people have to
That's
watch
why
it
you
on
have to stick
YouTube.
around to the end. It's like a Marvel.
It is. It is
you
like a
know?
Marvel.
Get the post-credit scene.
That's exactly what it is.
Oh man. Good.